What's up, everyone? You may have noticed a few changes that I've been absent, and apologize about my voice in advance. I'm kind of sick right now. I think it's been about almost 2-3 years since my last video, but I felt like I needed to get back into the swing of things and just make something. Now, you may have heard, I'm sure you have, that Every Time I Die I've broken up. They are one of my favorite bands. If you haven't noticed by watching the channel or listening to me talk or seeing my tattoos or anything, I'm sure you've known that. So this has kind of hit me pretty hard, and I wanted to do a video on that today to kind of remember them in a positive light and just talk about them and discuss what I feel their greatest contributions were. So the easiest way to do that is with a little bit of a countdown. So we're going to be talking about the best Every Time I Die albums, or I guess the ordering of the Every Time I Die albums from best to worst, or in this case, best to least best. So the first album we're going to kick things off with is number 9. I'm not going to be talking about any of their EPs or anything like that, just the solid studio albums. So to start things off at number 9 is actually their first album, which is Last Night in Town. Now this album I feel like is a little bit rough around the edges. I think it's so low on the rankings here just because it's a showcase of things to come. There's a lot of the chaos, the sarcasm, the everything that we expect from the band, and the just the guitar riffs. Logic of Crocodiles comes to mind as being one that would have been fitting on any of their newer albums, which is kind of the bigger single off of this album. But it still just feels, especially vocally, very, very rough. Keith's vocals on this album are not refined in any way. They kind of feel like he's just screaming at the top of his lungs for the sake of screaming. There's no real harmony parts in here. There are some, but they're few and far between. It's more just following the pattern of what kind of chaotic hardcore mathcore was doing at that time. It fits in with that time period, and it is definitely worth a listen, but it's kind of just hard. It's hard to get into. It's very abrasive at times, and for the reasons I've mentioned, the fact that everything else that they've done has kind of taken the best aspects of this album and built upon them and made them better, that's kind of why it's at the bottom of this list. And that's again why I say it's not necessarily a bad album, it's just that everything else that comes after this is much, much better. So number 8 is actually going to be following the chronological order of releases, is going to be Hot Damn. Now, you may be asking, why is Hot Damn the classic album, the kind of breakout album on this, and why is it so low? And again, same reasons that Last Night in Town is so low. It's just that everything else they've done exceeds what everything that they do on this album. Now, there's definitely some absolute bangers on this album, like Floater, She's My Rushmore. You know, there's a lot going on here, and again, you see what is to come. The sarcastic and witty lyrics, the fast-paced guitar riffs, and there's definitely more harmonies and melodies on this album. There's a lot more to kind of catch your attention, stick with you, and to get into, but it's not refined in any way, shape, or form. The more singing parts are very hard to listen to. It sounds like he's straining his voice, and that's kind of why I'm so negative on the album itself. I don't mean to be negative on it. I do love this album. It's why I keep saying this isn't worst to best. It's just going from the least great to the greatest. And I think Hot Damn was a milestone. I think it kind of broke them out into the scene. I think that it did a lot of things. I just feel like everything else that they've kind of done took that and refined it and made it better. Number 7 is New Junk Aesthetic. Now, I know you're thinking here, and you're going to be asking, why do you have the album cover tattooed on you if you're ranking it so low? And the reason for that is because of the production. And I know it's a tired excuse to knock an album for its production, but I really think here that the album is held back. Particularly, the guitar tones are just too sharp, too high, too clean. It's too much of a clean album, and it doesn't work. The guitar parts really sound very samey throughout the songs. There's really no change ups here. It's not as, I would say, as chaotic, for lack of a better term, as their other albums, the ones that came before it and the ones that came after it. And it just doesn't reach the same highs. And I really think a lot of that has to do with the way that it's mixed specifically. I think it's a really big holdback for it. The other issue I take with this album is the vocal work on here feels very, the delivery just feels very samey. It doesn't have the same emotion that other albums do with Keith's lyrics and his vocal delivery. That's not to say that there's not emotional parts. There definitely are moments. There's I would say, it's very soulful moments on here, but it's just that it lacks the urgency and emotive quality that other albums have and that he has done in the future and past in their works. Number 6 is From Parts Unknown. Now, this album, I feel like, was a kind of similar in the same sense as New Junk Aesthetic. It took a more punky side to Every Time I Die. It took a more soulful side. It really kind of pushed them in a direction I really feel like we haven't seen them do before and really since. Perhaps on Radical a little bit, but we'll get to that. It's just that, again, the production, it feels like the album was recorded kind of in a tin can, and everything just sounds kind of flat. And then, that's a personal opinion to me. And again, this is my personal ranking, so feel free to argue with me and disagree. Tell me I don't know shit down in the comments, but that's just my feeling on this album. I also feel like it has some of the weakest lyrics on that they've ever done. Nothing really landed or stuck for me. There's moments, there's definitely flashes throughout. It's just that, nothing really stuck there. I do really like the fact that it managed to take a more thrashy and punky kind of approach to things with the drumming and everything else on the album. I do enjoy that. It's a very kind of fast-paced album. It's very quick. It's very in your face, and I do enjoy that about this album. It just, I think there's other things that kind of detract from it, that hold it back from a little bit. I definitely respect it. I understand why people love it. It's just on me, for me, it's why it's ranked kind of in the towards the bottom half of things. Number 5 is Gutter Phenomenon. Now, this is where I think things start getting very, very good. I think this is top tier Every Time I Die. The transition from Hot Damn all the way to Gutter Phenomenon is just insane. There's just such a big improvement in Keith Buckley's vocal work particularly, and I feel like the production works here. Everything comes through clean and noticeable. There's nothing gets lost in the mix. Now, I know I use clean kind of as a negative thing on previous albums. What I really meant to say there was sterile. This feels clean in the sense of nothing's muddy, nothing, you hear the bass, you hear the drums, you hear the guitar, you hear the vocals, nothing really kind of overpowers one another. Some songs, something might stand out a little bit more, but that's not due to the mixing or anything like that. That's just due to the style and just how good things are. I think that the guitar work going from Hot Damn to Gutter Phenomenon is just a huge jump up. They seem to have more control. They seem to be more relaxed. There seems to be more just fun. The guest vocal work on the album is definitely a pleasant surprise. You know, you have people like Gerard Way or Darren Palumbo on albums, and it just works. It really fits in with everything and kind of everything going at the end. You've got some hit singles on here that definitely worked, and it just I feel like it's such a step up that everything kind of just came together. The only thing that really holds this back to me is it doesn't necessarily feel like a super cohesive album. There's no real mood or theme or anything like that. It kind of feels more like a collection of songs, and that works. You know, it's not necessarily doesn't detract from the enjoyment of the album or anything like that. I just feel it holds it back a little bit, and it's, you know, it's one reason why it ends up where it is on the list. Number 4 is Radical, which is their most recent release. I have now had time to listen to it, to process it, and to kind of separate my feelings on the breakup of the band as on, you know, polluting this album a little bit. So that's why it ranks where it does for me. Now, what I'm going to say next is probably going to sound a little bit contradictory, but this is some of their best work that they've done. I feel like it's some of Keith's best work. It has some of their best songs on here. Thing with Feathers, for instance, is a direction I never really thought I'd see them taking. Post Boredom is just one song that gets stuck in your head consistently. It's got a theme going for it. It's definitely something that it's probably the most down-to-earth album that they've ever written. To me, again, one of the biggest issues is the production. It sounds too sharp, too clean, too sterile. And the other issue I have with it is there's some songs that really kind of just don't do anything for me, are hard to get into. There's a couple songs that kind of sound very similar to each other and get lost. I also feel like the way the album was set up, probably some of the songs could have been in a different order. I know that's such a minor nitpick, but again, that's where we're getting to this point because this is such a great album, and the other albums are so good that it's hard to really find anything to justify where they are in the rankings without getting a little nitpicky. So that's another thing that I have on this album. I think some of the riffs on this album just feel a little safe, I guess would be the best term. They don't feel like they're kind of doing anything. Even on From Parts Unknown, I feel like they took a little bit of a risk with some of the stuff. But when they get into the kind of chaotic here, I feel like a lot of them sound like we've heard them before or just kind of generic. Also, realistically, if you force me to rank these, this ranking is probably on equal grounds with the next one, which is going to be number 4, and that is X-Lives. X-Lives, I feel like, really kind of made up for New Junk Aesthetic. I feel like the production of it was a little bit grimier, rougher, and in the sense that it still felt like nothing really got lost in the mix, but it just had a bit more charm to it, kind of do-it-yourself home production, even though obviously it was a big album, but it just has that feeling. It also has that cohesiveness feeling to it. It felt like in a lot of ways that it was a sequel to The Big Dirty, which I'll get to, but I would kind of, it's hard to separate between X-Lives and Radical for me at this point, because I feel like they are equal in terms of things they do right, in terms of things they don't do well. Same thing with X-Lives I have with Radical is that some of the songs kind of sound too similar to each other. Some of the riffs sound a little bit too safe. They sound like either we've heard them from Every Time I Die or from other bands. So those are probably the negative qualities I have about the album. But other than that, I think it's fantastic. It definitely, I think it has some of Keith Buckley's best lyrics on there. It's got some of the best emotional lyrics on there, and I think that they just did a great job kind of returning to form in a sense. The it kicks things right off the from the get-go. The first song on the album is absolutely just incredible and sucks you in. But from there, it's kind of a little bit of a mixed boat. But overall, it just does such a good job at nailing everything that you would expect or want from an Every Time I Die album. Now I'm going to go back, but I think I got these numbers wrong. I think we're actually, that was number 3. We're actually on number 2, which I'm going to give to Low Teens. Now this is another one where I think they are on par with each other. You obviously know what number 1 is at this point, but Low Teens, I think, really was a masterpiece of an album. I feel like it was their swan song. There's just songs on there that I feel like they'll never be able to top. Just absolutely incredible, devastating emotion. It's such a bleak album. It really is a dark, depressing kind of album if you actually listen to it. There's a lot of deeper themes going on with it, so I feel like it's some of the best writing. I feel like guitar work on it. It feels almost like, I don't want to say jam band, but it feels like they kind of just got in the studio and started playing versus oh, I want this to sound like this, or I want this to sound like this. It kind of just sounds like they just let it flow. And it's one of the reasons the album works so well, and I feel like that's also another aspect of the why the production on this album works so well, is because it kind of sounds dirty or grimy, or just this doesn't sound like they really touch things much, and that works for it, and the free flowing kind of nature of this album. I really enjoyed it when I first heard it. It kind of sank in, and I've even probably like it even more than when I first heard it. So it stuck with me, and it's definitely one of my favorite albums from them. And I think that they did a excellent job with it. And again, I feel like there's some on there that aren't going to be topped. So you already know what number 1 is, and that's The Big Dirty. And a lot of, again, these are my personal rankings, so a lot of this is emotional for me. It's just been my favorite album, and it is my favorite album. Everything from Pigs is Pigs, No Son of Mine, it's just a non-stop, in-your-face. Every song is just solid. There's really, isn't a song on this album I feel like has any kind of negative quality to it. I feel like the production, again, it matches the mood, it matches the tone. It feels grimy, it feels dirty, for lack of a better term, but it works with what they're going with. It's a very, very sarcastic album. It's probably got some of the wittiest lyricism that they've ever done. Not necessarily the best, but I would say absolutely the wittiest that they've done. And, everything just kind of works so well on it. And I have just personal emotional attachment to it. I actually did not listen to it when it came out. Other than Werewolf, which is a song that I'd heard, but I never actually listened to the album until after I'd listened to New Junk Aesthetic, which was kind of where I started, but that's a whole nother story. But it hit me at a time in my life when that's what I was feeling, that's what I was going through. It kind of feels like you almost feel like a stranger in a dusty old western town. It's kind of what it makes you feel like, and that's the tone of it, and that's how I was feeling in my life. So it really hits home for me. I know what Keith Buckley was kind of going through at that time, and you really do feel it. And it's just one of the reasons why it captured me so much and why it's one of my favorite albums. But I also think it is truly one of their best albums. This is where I put them both on par as Low Teens and The Big Dirty. I mean, in terms of quality, I feel like they're kind of on par with each other. I just give it to The Big Dirty just because, the emotional content there for me and just the way I've connected. So those are my rankings of the Every Time I Die discography. I'm sure you have feelings, so let me know down below in the comments. Tell me which ones are your favorites. How would you rank them? What are you feeling? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I want to hear from you, so let me know down below. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I will be making more, I promise. This is the first of after a very long hiatus, but definitely hoping to get back into things, and I will be seeing you soon.